Now, this is probably going to be a very controversial hot take here, but if you're one of those people that are living in Lethbridge and you've been living in Lethbridge for a while and you're on social media and you're saying there's nothing to do here, Lethbridge sucks, it's most likely your fault. There's always Hello, and welcome to another episode of YQL Real Talk, where we talk all things related to living in Lethbridge and the local real estate market. Today we're going to be talking about the pros and cons of living in Lethbridge, which I have done a video on my YouTube channel. So if you're watching on YouTube, there is a full video. That's, I think, my most popular video that I've done on the YouTube channel. So we decided, hey, that video did really good. People are interested. Let's make a podcast that's a little bit more in depth, provide some alternative information. But that being said, if you do want just those bullet points slammed right at you, then YouTube is the place to go, because I try to get it out as quick as possible over on that video.
If you are watching on YouTube as well, this podcast, you may notice a few changes. First of all, we have a whole new set. So we used to film from Kurtis's beautiful office in our old house, and now Kurtis is working from an unfinished basement in this place. So we've got some work to do there. But this is our dining room table at our new house. So it's a new set for you guys. And you might also notice a little bit of festive decor because we're recording this in December. I'm not confident on when this podcast episode is going to be out, so
Merry Christmas, no matter what time of year it is.
Yeah, it might be belated or early Christmas, but
that being said, we're going to start with the pros of living in Lethbridge today.
I thought that we'd start out on a positive note here for sure. And the first pro that I have, I just titled Things to Do, and this is kind of a very broad category. But why don't you start off with some of the things that we love most to do in the area?
Yeah, well, Chelsea and I have a separate YouTube channel that we actually do lots of travel content with, and we work with lots of tourism boards. So for us, living in Lethbridge has been like a huge competitive advantage for us this way.
An opportunity.
Just because there's so much to do around here, and the landscapes, no matter which way you go around Lethbridge, are so diverse. So if you go south, you can hit like some amazing hoodoos and like badlands areas that you've probably never seen before. If you go west, you're in the mountains. You can go east, and then you're in not the mountains, but a weird prairie area that's looks exactly like the mountains when you're actually in it. It's at the same elevation as the mountains, but it's called Cypress Hills. It's fascinating.
Unique, clearly.
If you go north, you can head to some of the most concentrated dinosaur fossils in the entire world. So living around here, there's like honestly endless things to do, and they're all a short road trip away, which is what I really like about this area of Alberta.
Yeah, so we're about an hour and a half away from the Crow's Nest Palace, which is a huge mountain pass. We're an hour and a half away. Don't quote me on these times. They're all approximate. Away from Waterton National Park, which is a huge park. We're an hour and a half away from Montana. We love to do camping in Montana, and access to flights out of Great Falls.
If you like skiing, there's a ski hill close by.
Yes. 2 hours north, you have Calgary with a huge international airport, and a little bit further than that is Banff National Park and like world-renowned national parks.
In Alberta, it's very common to know what Banff is, but I've noticed that a lot of people are, oh, what's Banff? Never been there before, never heard of it. Just look it up. It's the most beautiful place you'll ever see in your entire life. Like look up Moraine Lake, Peyto Lake, all those really blue lakes. They're incredible. And they're literally right at your fingertips out here.
Absolutely.
We probably go there, we try to go at least probably 3 times a year out to those locations, because they're just mind-blowing. Just talked about everything that you can kind of do outside of the city or that's very close to Lethbridge. So inside of the city, if you're looking for things to do, I would suggest some of the theaters around here. Like there's both the university. I don't think the college has one.
No.
But there's the university and the Yates, and we're always getting lots of concerts and lots of plays, that sort of thing, in either one of those venues.
Or the NMAX Center has had world-class entertainment.
Yeah, the NMAX Center is like our hockey rink. So again, looking for something to do. There's a WHL team here.
And the university has tons of sporting events as well.
The Lethbridge Hurricanes gets a ton of support from the city, which is always cool. It's like the biggest professional hockey association we have here. So everybody really gets behind the Lethbridge Hurricanes. And then in that venue, that's pretty much where any of the big concert names that you hear always go to the NMAX Center, because that's the biggest venue in Lethbridge. Then yeah, of course there's lots of post-secondary sports to watch. Like if you like basketball, if you like hockey, whatever, that's all here too. Both at the university and the college.
The university, I find, is this like little hidden gem. And I feel like we have a little bit more of the inside track on it because we attended the school, so we know what the facilities are at the school.
In my past job, I used to work very closely with the athletics department there. So I did attend a lot of sporting events when I was working. And not the athletes, the sporting community there is actually thriving, and it's really good sports to go and attend. And I hope that they keep snowballing on their momentum and more people start going, because it is really good and entertaining sport to go watch.
Yeah. And I also think it's hilarious, like Kurtis is going on about the sports, and I was going to say, because they put on great theater performances and like the students do a great job of putting on like these art galleries and performances, because there is such a huge music department there. So you can watch all the drama students do their, I want to say like every semester, at least there's like a few different plays every semester.
Yeah. When we were in college, we used to go, or university, I should say, we used to go quite a bit. Sometimes they were mandatory, but we still went.
Yes.
And I was always surprised every time I went. Like their plays are super entertaining and very well done. One of the biggest draws, I think, right now, and something that Lethbridge should be super excited about, is the YMCA that just got built here. Now, if you hear me say YMCA, you're like, oh, everybody has a YMCA. But we actually have the second largest YMCA, I'm pretty sure, in Canada. It might be Alberta, but we should check that. But I'm pretty sure it's in Canada. This place is massive. There's like 6 full courts in there, I'm pretty sure, plus like a
indoor track
that's just short of Olympic size, because they don't want to have meets there, so they just went just a little bit shorter.
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
And that's also why they did the composite floors, because they don't want to have big basketball tournaments there, that they want to keep it more for the community. So that's why they did composite over hardwood.
I'm learning things.
They also have a lane swim, like a dedicated lane swim, which is a big thing for me, because when I go swimming, I do like to go lane swimming, but lane swimming is kind of pushed in the corner, probably because it's not a big money maker, which I understand. But at least here they have dedicated lane swim. There's
water slides.
No, what's the surf simulator?
I was going to mention that because we have a friend from Ontario who is a big wake surfer, and he was trying to look for places in the country that had the surf simulators, and he messaged us. He's like, what? Like, you guys are one of the only places in the country that has one of these surf simulators here. Yeah, so that's pretty cool.
I still haven't done it, but it does look fun.
Yeah, I'm too scared. You have to sign a waiver.
I'm just worried that I'm going to fall, my shorts are going to fly off. I've seen that happen. Not in person, but...
Yeah, there's a huge gym facility there and all sorts of classes as well. There's childcare, there's hockey rinks.
The gym's awesome. The whole thing's brand new. And attached to it is also the ATP Center that hosts 3 full ice rinks, and like 10 sheets of curling ice. Like, this place is huge.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's going to be home to a lot of good sporting activities in the future.
And prior to this facility being built, which is amazing, it's still great to have like the college and the university, because they both have great gyms and fitness facilities that are still available to the public. They do have all those courts and open time, and there's intramural sports and community sports teams that you can join, run out of these facilities as well. So
absolutely.
A video topic that I think we need to do is winter specific things to do in Lethbridge too, because most people are probably going to be like me, and the first time that snowfall hits, you feel more inclined to stay inside the house. But I'm really impressed. Like downtown, they've been working all summer long on a new...
Festival Square?
Yeah, it's called Festival Square. So it's a new meeting place right downtown where they had live music and performances all summer long outside on the square. And now I just saw that they're building an ice rink outside, like right downtown, which I think is so cool. When I first moved here, I was going to the college, and right across from the college is the NMAX Center, and the NMAX Center hosts a public skate, and I thought it was so cool for me to go skate on like the big ice rink arena where all the WHL players are playing. So there's still a ton of things to do in winter that get people out. The Japanese Garden Light Festival just started.
Yep, we got to go to that. We usually go every year. For kids, there's the Sugar Bowl. You got to go to the Sugar Bowl. When I was a kid, I used to get fired up to go tobogganing at the Sugar Bowl, go grab like a $10 crazy carpet. And they call it a Sugar Bowl because it's basically a big bowl, and then it snows. Sugar Bowl, so it looks like a bowl of sugar.
Yeah.
And then there's just a big like dome. inverted dome that you can toboggan down, and the hill's huge.
It's a mega,
So much fun.
the tobogganing hotspot of the city.
Yeah, you got to build some jumps. Now, this is probably going to be a very controversial hot take here, but if you're one of those people that are living in Lethbridge and you've been living in Lethbridge for a while and you're on social media and you're saying there's nothing to do here, Lethbridge sucks, it's most likely your fault. There's always something to do. And if you lived in Calgary, you'd be saying the exact same thing. If you lived in Edmonton, Vancouver, whatever, you're going to be saying that there's never anything to do. There is lots to do. You just literally got to get out there and go find it.
Absolutely.
And it's not hard to do. But that being said, if you are looking for things to do, because Chelsea and I do a lot of tourism videos and that sort of thing, you can feel free to visit our other YouTube channel called Kurtis and Chelsea, and we will help you find your adventure, so to speak. And if you go in there, there's lots of things to do on Lethbridge, around Alberta specifically, on that channel. So that should help you out.
Absolutely. There's another fact that I've heard, and I can't verify this fact, but I've heard it from people within the restaurant industry in Lethbridge. But they say that Lethbridge has more restaurants per capita than any other place in the province. And even if this fact isn't like statistically 100% accurate, I think it does speak to the sheer amount of restaurants that we have in the city. And 13th Ave is one thing that I wanted to mention.
Street?
Yes, sorry, 13th Street in Lethbridge.
North.
13th.
Let's narrow this
I'm
down.
gonna say. So 13th Street North in Lethbridge is one location that I wanted to mention because I think it's a kind of cool example of what's going on in the city right now, and that you can walk down 13th Ave and
Street.
basically why am I saying Ave? You can walk down 13th Street and basically take a tour around the world. There's a Nepalese grocery store. There's our favorite Vietnamese restaurant.
Spring
There's Luigi's restaurant. There's all sorts of like a very diverse community all in this one street. And as we see more and more people move to the city, I'm very interested to see how Lethbridge evolves.
Asian food market. Don't forget about the Asian
yes,
market.
we love the Asian supermarket. Yeah.
But yeah, hopefully, like, if you do a drive-by of 13th Street North, you're going to see that it kind of looks very much older and honestly run down, but you can see that there's these new businesses coming in, and there is lots of revitalization programs out there right now. So I do hope they start to continue to revitalize, I guess, revitalize that street specifically, because it could be a very cool street. It reminds me of like the beginnings of a Queen Street in Toronto, which would be super cool. And there's just like all these little teeny tiny little boutique shops and bars and whatever. If you could line 13th Street North with a bunch of restaurants and bars, that would be amazing.
It would.
So that was very in depth on what there is to do in the city.
I could go on and on. I love our city for things to do.
Yep.
Every now and then we go to Calgary and we get a little bit jealous about what there is to do in the city there. But then I think that's just a little bit of a reminder that we need to pay attention to what's going on in your own city. And you do start to get envious of other places.
The grass is always greener.
Exactly.
No matter where you live.
Exactly.
So next is the cost of living. So I've talked about this lots on the podcast already. It seems like it kind of works its way into every podcast, but it's probably Lethbridge's biggest competitive advantage by far. The thing about Lethbridge that's different from any other province in Alberta is when you're thinking about Alberta, you're probably thinking it's very oil and gas based, where in Lethbridge, that's just not the case. Our economy is very much supported by agriculture. And honestly, the university and the college, those are some of the biggest employers in Lethbridge. Those things don't stop every year. There's always students going to school, and agriculture never stops either. I mean, there's slight hiccups in whatever weather and stuff like that, but it's not following the big boom and bust cycle that you see in a Calgary, Red Deer, or Edmonton or anything like that. Those cities are very much so. When oil's good, everybody's happy. When oil's tanking, then everyone's upset and the economy kind of falls with it. And you can literally see that on any graph you look at. And Lethbridge specifically is very steady. Like, even over COVID, everybody's housing market went crazy. Lethbridge did pick up speed, like, by a lot. I'm not putting that out there. Everybody did more. There was more volume. Housing prices increased just like the rest of Canada, but it wasn't like Toronto or Vancouver where your housing prices were double and tripling, like insanely like that. We went up like probably 20% over the last 3 years. And now they're starting to come down a little bit. But again, it's not like you're in Vancouver where they doubled and now they're coming down 20, 30%. Like it's not as volatile and scary.
So Alberta Health Services is actually the biggest employer in the city. And when you talk about Alberta Health Services and the university, the Lethbridge School District is another huge employer. And then our industrial area has huge processing facilities like Lay's Potato Chips and Rogers Sugars. And when I'm thinking about those places being the biggest employers,
Pratt and
Whitney, that's fancy.
They make, believe it or not, they make airplane engines right here in Lethbridge. And it's like a big part of manufacturing is right here in Lethbridge, and lots of people like hear of Pratt and Whitney. They don't know what it is. So
when I think about these major employers, nurses and teachers and all of the admin and service workers that it takes to run a huge facility like the university, I also think that these are like very transferable skills. So if you have a career similar to something like this outside of Lethbridge and in a different province, I think these are skills that are going to transfer over really well. And I also spent a lot of time in the industrial area lately. I had a completely unrelated project to do, but I was driving through the industrial area and I was blown away. This was the most time since moving here that I had ever spent in the industrial area, and seeing these huge businesses with huge warehouses and facilities and 50, 100 cars parked out front, to businesses that I had never really heard of before, but I'm sure in some secondary way have like touched through, like all these manufacturing things. And when you're building a house, huge warehouses and stuff for granite companies. And I was just blown away. I was really impressed by the diversity and how many big businesses that I'd still never even heard of. So.
The next pro of Lethbridge is the weather.
Kind of a pro, kind of a con. We like to see the grass on the greener side here, so it's a pro in my books.
The biggest pro for especially people coming from Vancouver is that Lethbridge gets on average 333 days of sunshine per year, which is insane. It's sunny here almost every day. Not today, but most days it is. It's kind of a little overcast today, which is unusual.
So Kurt's mom currently lives in the lower mainland of BC, and she said moving from Alberta to BC, she's like, it took years. It took years to readjust to that gloomy nature before like the depression wasn't happening all the time. And now I've met a handful of your clients now, and they all seem incredibly chipper, and I'd like to thank the sunshine for that.
Well, that is one of the big things, and I do want to have. There's a client that I want to have on the podcast at one point. He probably hasn't really experienced what the sunshine has done to him yet from where he's been, and he didn't talk about it. But that's a question that I'll definitely ask him. But there are a lot of people who. Oh, if you're watching on YouTube, there's our cat.
This is
Hi,
Kona.
Yeah, a lot of clients that are thinking about moving to Lethbridge are very aware that there's no sunshine where they're coming from, and they're very grateful to come to a place that has lots of sunshine. Okay, you gotta go.
She's playing with the Christmas decorations.
Chinooks. We have Chinooks in Lethbridge. Do you know what a Chinook is? Probably not. So a Chinook is basically a lot of wind that comes in, which Lethbridge is the windy city. We'll get to that in a second. But we get a lot of wind in the winter that comes in. So typically how this works is we'll get a deep freeze. We'll get to like minus 15, minus 20, whatever for a week or so. And then all of a sudden it gets windy. And then it's the worst because it's cold and windy. But then that wind blows in a whole bunch of warm air. So that little deep freeze that we go through, it never really lasts long. We'll get some snow that accumulates. Chinook comes in, warms us up. Literally sometimes 40 degrees. We'll go from minus 20 to plus 20 in a week. So of course you're going to get some crazy weather in between
dramatic,
that.
Yeah.
Sometimes we'll that Chinook comes in, warms us up, kind of gets rid of our snow, and then we'll kind of cool down again in the winter to minus 10, minus 7, minus 5. I think it's like minus 2 today or something. And then the cycle just kind of repeats all winter long. So you're never stuck in like minus 20 all winter.
No.
I'm not going to promise you and say that it's going to be in the plus digits all winter long. Sometimes it is, but can't promise that.
I have two anecdotes for this. First, you posted a home tour at the beginning of November or something like that, and people from outside of province were commenting and saying, "See, this is why I wouldn't live in Alberta. It's the beginning of November and they're already covered in snow, and we haven't even seen snow here yet." And then if we would have filmed a video 3 days later, there wouldn't have been a flake of snow on the ground. Like it genuinely doesn't last long. And my other anecdote to illustrate this is when I was a college student living off campus. We didn't own a shovel for the first entire year that we moved into our rental. And it was just because we just wait a few days and it was gone. So
Probably not the best thing we should have
never
done.
felt the need to get a shovel.
Little sidetrack here. People on YouTube need to get some context before they comment sometimes. They literally see one video and they base all of their knowledge around that one video and then explode in the comments. Like, maybe watch a couple more videos. Research Lethbridge more before you open your mouth.
Don't go on a tangent
Trolls.
about YouTube comments. It's
Trolls, I tell you. When you're speaking of, like, let's say you're comparing places in Lethbridge, or places in Alberta, I should say. If you're looking at, Calgary, Edmonton, whatever, Lethbridge is the most further south, and we do get the most benefit of the Chinook winds, I think. So on average, we're probably at least 3 to 5 degrees warmer than Calgary. And then you can just add on a couple of degrees the more north you go. Like Chelsea's parents are from Lacombe, Alberta, which is near Red Deer. And any given day, they're at least 5-7 degrees colder. Maybe not in the summer, it gets a little closer, but in the winter for sure. Like, they get snow. It snows, like, let's say it starts snowing in November. It snows there, you push it off to the side, it snows again, you push it off to the side, and it rarely goes anywhere, and you just have this accumulation of snow all winter long, whereas here it's like snows melts.
My mom likes to watch the weather, Lacombe versus Lethbridge, and I get told when we're on par or when Lacombe's a little bit warmer because obviously it's a rare occurrence.
It's got to be a competition.
Yep.
Obviously, like we said, we do get the benefit of warmer weather, but you do have to put up with the wind. And the wind sucks. Nobody likes wind, but at the same time, it does bring that warmer weather. So it's like, what do you want to deal with? If you're in Vancouver, beautiful city, you got to deal with rain all the time.
Yep.
If you're in Toronto, I don't know, doesn't it get really cold in Toronto? Like super cold?
Yeah, I've heard of ice storms and stuff like that, but
I
haven't spent any time in the winter
Are
in
they
that
like
area.
Vancouver soft? And they're like, oh, it sucks here.
Who knows? Now, we don't like to be negative Nancy's here, but in the interest of full disclosure, we will talk about some of the cons when it comes to living in Lethbridge.
So next up is driving and commuting in the city. I've talked about this before. It's a huge benefit living in Lethbridge because if you're coming from a big city, literally anywhere in the city is a 20-minute drive maximum.
Yeah, that's max.
If you look at, I did this in my last YouTube video, which I don't know, this podcast is probably going to come up before that. I did this in a YouTube video, but if you put it, in Google Maps, like go from the YMCA, which is like as far as you can go almost on the west side, to Costco, which is on the other side of town, so the west of the south. I know west and south don't sound like opposite sides of the city, but it is if you look at it in the map. It's literally a 20-minute drive in like bad Lethbridge driving conditions. So that is actually a pro of living in Lethbridge. However, there is really no good public transit. And I have an aunt that works for public transit, so she's probably going to be mad at me when I say this.
No, I have points. I have points as to why it's not Lethbridge's fault that we don't have the most reliable public transit. And we shouldn't even just pick on public transit. Getting around the city when you don't drive is going to be a pain. It's not very walkable. We're spread out into like suburbs and communities. Like we're spread out. We're flat. We don't have any big like
Lethbridge really
scrapers.
builds outwards.
Yes, not upwards, outwards. That's the best way of illustrating it. Thank you.
Not very densified.
Yes. So we don't have like a downtown core that feels very walkable for you to get a grocery store and your favorite restaurant and you live there.
As much as we want that,
absolutely,
it's just not a thing in Lethbridge.
Yes. So the community isn't particularly walkable. Bikeable, a little bit more so.
Well, it's walkable, just not walkable to all of your amenities.
Yes.
Like we can go out right now. We live in Copperwood now, and we can go have a walk and go wherever we want. And there's like 3 ponds around here, and there's lots of parks. Lethbridge also has more parks per capita than anywhere else. So that way it's very walkable.
Yeah.
But you're going to need a car to commute.
Yes. It's not like in Vancouver, you can live in your neighborhood and if
Can you do that? Or
I
is
think
this
so.
what we think?
I think it is.
We've never lived there. So can you just like not have a car in a city like that?
My view or my thought would be is that you live in your neighborhood, and if you don't want to leave your neighborhood, you don't have to. You can walk to the grocery store, you can walk to your favorite restaurant, you can walk to your favorite coffee shop.
Maybe that's just what we think, but I would hope that's what it's like. That's what, if I move to a city, that's what I envision too. But
Yes. So we don't have those things going on. Bikeable, it's a little bit more bikeable, but now you run into two other factors. One is the ginormous coulee that divides the city. So there's this huge hill in the middle of the city. So now if you want to travel from one side to the other, the biking distance might not be too terrible, but you have a huge hurdle that you have to make it up.
e-bikes
or it's snowing.
That is actually one thing that the city has done over the summer is they brought in e-bikes and e-scooters, which were super fun. And that honestly does help a whole lot. Like they did some studies on it or whatever. And they said that everybody that used an e-bike or a scooter resulted in another $10 or $20 per person downtown that they're like leaving money down there. So that's awesome.
Perfect.
To see downtown thriving like that, and it's just getting it more accessible to people.
I think the biggest complaint when it comes to public transit is wait times and how often buses come. And I know that they've worked really hard on solutions and mitigating this, but when you're in a city where the culture is that you have to drive, and I think that's like typical Alberta culture too, right? Like you turn 14, you get your learner's license, you drive, like that's freedom.
Yeah, and I think in Calgary, for example, you might have a car, but you might also use public transit.
Yes.
That's not a thing in Lethbridge. If you have a car, you're driving.
Yes.
I think, in my experience, the people that are using a bus just don't have a car, which is fine, but it's just a different mindset that when you're in Calgary, you're like, oh, well, maybe it'll be faster if I use the train this time to get to the Flames game.
Yes, where public transit can actually be more efficient.
Yeah, nobody does that in Lethbridge.
And that's what I'm saying. When you have a city where the demand isn't there for public transit, how do you improve? How do you get better? People aren't funding it for these improvements. And I think that demand drives change, and we just don't have that demand.
Next is that we are a small city, which
could be a pro.
I feel like this could be a pro too. I didn't write this outline. Chelsea wrote this, and I was reading this. I'm like, hey, that's a pro, not a con.
Well,
but it's both for sure.
It's always both.
So a small city, we do, when it comes to like shopping, there's no doubting this. Like we have less stores than Calgary. Obviously, we're literally 10 times smaller than Calgary. Do we have everything you need? Absolutely. All the big box stores are here. Furniture stores, whatever, everything you actually need is here. But when you want to get like more specialty stores or something, like for us, we get most of our furniture from StruckTube. We don't have a StruckTube here in Lethbridge. I wish we would, but we don't. So we have to go to Calgary, which is literally 2 hours away. So if you're in a big city, that's like, oh, I'm going into town to go shopping anyway. So for us, it's no big deal. But people do often go to Calgary for their big, even in Lethbridge, like not just us, there's people that are like, oh, we're going to go do some
shopping
back
for
to
the
school
day.
shopping, and they just go up to Calgary, which is not great either because you want to support local, but more shopping in Calgary. So if you like to shop, go up to Calgary.
And the nature of online shopping and the world being online means that 90% of what we want is at our fingertips anyhow.
If I could do all my shopping online, I would.
Yes.
Which is also as bad, but start some online shops in Lethbridge and I'll buy from you. Like it's just way more convenient.
Absolutely.
A definite con of Lethbridge is the airport. It's not a very big airport.
It's not.
It's on the cons list.
It's on the cons list, but it's not that bad. And we've had good experiences, and we can talk about those.
Yes. You can often find flights that are connecting from Lethbridge via WestJet. So you usually fly from Lethbridge up to Calgary, and then you connect anywhere. And when you're doing that, like say we just flew to LA for a vacation. We flew from Lethbridge to Calgary and out. And the difference in cost to fly from, for us to drive up to Calgary, park our car, get a hotel for the night, then fly out is, what was the cost for us to connect our flight here? Like maybe $100 or something?
Yeah, it's nothing.
Sometimes it's free with WestJet, depending on the flight.
Yeah.
So if we're going to spend another extra $100 just to fly here, rather than park a car, get a hotel, all that stuff, it's way more convenient as well to fly to Lethbridge because it's the smallest airport in the world. But there also is Flair Airlines that is trying to do some direct flights down to the States out of Lethbridge. And apparently they're going to be doing some more renovations. Hopefully they're coming soon.
I feel like I need to clarify the thing that you said that there was a free flight. And I feel like I need to clarify this. We can't just brush over that one. If you are booking a flight from Lethbridge to Calgary, I think typically it's like $250.
Yeah, it's not cheap.
It's not particularly
It's like just
cheap.
on the cusp.
It is just on the cusp.
Because if you're flying to Calgary, you got to go park your car somewhere. And you got to spend the time to drive. Gas is expensive. So like driving there and back's at least a tank of gas.
And depending on when your flight is, you might need the hotel.
So your tank of gas is like $100 plus to park your car is at least another $100. Plus the time, if you want to calculate your time into there. So it's like just on the cusp of being worth it. If it was like $100, I'd be like, we're flying to Calgary. Let's go.
Every time. Let's go. But we have had times where we were booking a flight not just to Calgary, like when we went to Mexico. So I booked a vacation package with WestJet to go to Mexico, and I priced it out what our vacation package would cost to fly from Calgary to whatever, and then I priced it out to fly from Lethbridge to whatever, and they were the exact same price.
Yeah.
So WestJet included this in the package, but to just free flights are not a thing. That's my disclaimer.
They're not a thing, but when you're connecting, it's often very inexpensive just to add on the flight here, which is awesome.
Yes.
And obviously WestJet does want to grow their offerings out of Lethbridge more. So let's hope that they do.
And every time that we've taken one of these flights out of Lethbridge, we've been on a full flight.
Yep.
And we're always very reassured by that because we want these services to keep growing. And again, like I said, demand drives these changes.
Yep.
So,
and they've done a lot of renovations to the airport too, which is nice, but they just need to build some more infrastructure there to get some more planes in. But that is the con, is that you're not going to get a direct flight. As of right now, you're not going to get a direct flight anywhere unless you're going to Calgary. So, but Flair is working on it, and they last fall they were supposed to be flying direct to Tucson, Arizona. Got delayed again, so hopefully they do that soon, and hopefully they keep expanding on it. Next is the crime as a con of Lethbridge. Honestly, I don't really talk about this too much because it's kind of a touchy subject. But in my experience, and again, I'm going to have this client on from Vancouver to talk about crime specifically in his experience, because he showed up here and it was like, you know, everybody was telling me about, oh, the crime in Lethbridge is so bad. And he like kind of looked left, looked right. He was like, what crime? There's like four homeless people here. Not that homeless people are the ones that are, what am I trying to say? They're not the ones that are spurring on crime, but often you see like in Vancouver, there's like East Hastings, which obviously there's a lot of crime there and there's a lot of homeless people and a lot of drugs. So when he's looking around, he's like, this is like one of the cleanest cities I've seen. And I think a lot of the crime aspect comes from your perception of what Lethbridge is. So there's been a lot of people that have lived in Lethbridge their entire life, and Lethbridge has always been super safe. There's been a very low homeless population, very low crime rate, to where over COVID, and there's some other factors that have played into it previously to COVID, but obviously over COVID, you can look anywhere in Canada, and this isn't just isolated to Lethbridge. Homeless populations have gone up everywhere. But when you're just looking in your own little bubble, you're like, oh my God, this city's getting out of hand. But if you open your eyes a little bit, and depending on where you're coming from, the crime's going to be like nothing.
So you're visiting Kurtis's family in Vancouver, and they live in Maple Ridge. And literally up the street from them in Maple Ridge was a tent city that had started to form. They live in a beautiful, family-oriented neighborhood. Like, your cousin walks to school every day. Like, there's absolutely...
Grade 2?
Yeah, there's absolutely nothing wrong with the community. Just up the street is this massive tent city. People come to Lethbridge, and our tent city is like 510.
Was. I don't know if there's a tent city anymore.
No, it has. Winter. Yeah, it has been.
But
dealt
over
with.
The summer, there was a quote unquote tent city. It got a lot of publications, a lot of press, because what's going to make you watch the news other than talking about this tent city? There was like 4 tents there.
Yes.
And like, again, this client I was talking to specifically laughed. He was like, that's not a tent city.
Yes. There was a very troubling fact, and it's actually stuck with me, but it was something like 1 in 4 people in the Vancouver area right now are your chances of encountering like a random attack or like a random act of violence And that is like, that's a terrifying number to me, to be 1 in 4.
There's actually a YouTube video called Vancouver is Dying. It's like an hour long or something. I haven't finished it. I was on the treadmill, I was watching it, but I should finish that. We could put it in the show notes on this one too, but it's very interesting on just the landscape of Vancouver and how that's changing.
Now, if there was like a crime in Lethbridge that you had a 1 in 4 chance of encountering, it would be your vehicle getting broken into because you left your doors open.
There's no way that's 1 in 4 though. It's like,
I agree, but
I've lived here my whole life and that's never happened to me. I've heard of it happening to people.
Yes.
Just lock your door. It's fine.
That is by far the most common crime that I hear about.
And it happens everywhere.
Absolutely.
It happens in subdivisions, happens downtown.
Absolutely.
It happens in tell me a city it doesn't happen in.
Yes.
So, yeah, I don't know. It's really not that bad. And I think the media kind of blows it up. And I know I'm biased because I live here, but honestly, I've been to a lot of bigger cities and crime is a lot worse anywhere else, and we're very lucky to live in the city. But yeah, there's a little bit of the pros and cons. Hopefully we went a little bit more in depth and gave some more perspective on the pros and cons of living in Lethbridge. Again, check out the YouTube video on the channel. I think there's some stuff even in there that we didn't mention in that video that we mentioned here, and vice versa. So it's another good resource.
Always feel free to leave a comment if you have any follow-up questions or want us to elaborate on anything. We're always happy to do so.
Please do. And that's it for this video. So if you guys liked this podcast, this is a fairly new podcast. It would be appreciated if you could rate it on whatever you're listening to. If you're on YouTube, give it a like. If you want to see more of these videos, please subscribe no matter where you're listening to again. And again, my name is Kurtis Hawkins. I'm a realtor located right here in Lethbridge, Alberta. Feel free to reach out. If you're watching on YouTube, all my links are located down below and in the show notes, anywhere else. If you want to reach out to me, be sure to call, text, or email. Until then, we'll see you guys in the next video.